Hey, good morning. It's been a little while since I've been on. I'm glad to be able to be on again. Um, let's just jump right into it. We're going to be focusing on Second Nephi 2 today, and there's some awesome things in here. One of the things that I love about the Book of Mormon is that there's a veiled aspect to a lot of it. There's some obvious things, and then there's some things that you need to know a little. And if you dig a little, or you've been through the temple, you're going to see a lot of the stuff that's going on. So, Second Nephi 2. I'll do a quick reading of how much I want to go through. I think I just want to go through 8 verses. And after I do that, then I'm going to kind of talk about it a little, but let's read a little. I think that's what I want to do. So we're gonna just start reading. So Second Nephi 2, verse 1. And now, Jacob, I speak unto you. Thou art my firstborn in the days of my tribulation in the wilderness. And behold, in thy childhood thou hast suffered afflictions and much sorrow because of the rudeness of thy brethren. Nevertheless, Jacob, my firstborn in the wilderness, thou knowest the greatness of God, and he shall consecrate thine afflictions for thy gain. Wherefore thy soul shall be blessed, and thou shalt dwell safely with thy brother Nephi, and thy days shall be spent in the service of thy God. Wherefore I know that thou art redeemed, because of the righteousness of thy Redeemer. For thou hast beheld that in the fullness of time he cometh to bring salvation unto men. And thou hast beheld in thy youth his glory. Wherefore thou art blessed, even as they unto whom he shall minister in the flesh. For the Spirit is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the way is prepared from the fall of man, and salvation is free. And men are instructed sufficiently that they know good from evil. And the law is given unto men, and by the law no flesh is justified. Or by the law men are cut off. Yea, by the temporal law they were cut off, and also by the spiritual law they perish from that which is good, and becometh miserable forever. Wherefore redemption cometh in and through the Holy Messiah, for he is full of grace and truth. Behold, he offereth himself a sacrifice for sin, to answer the ends of the law, unto all those who have a broken heart and a contrite spirit, and unto none else can the ends of the law be answered. Wherefore, how great the importance to make these things known unto the inhabitants of the earth, that they may know that there is no flesh that can dwell in the presence of God, save it be through the merits and mercy and grace of the Holy Messiah, who layeth down his life according to the flesh, and taketh it again by the power of the Spirit, that he may bring to pass the resurrection of the dead, being the first that should rise. Wherefore he is the first fruits unto God, inasmuch as he shall make intercession for all the children of men, and they that believe in him shall be saved. Okay, that's enough for right now. I have a lot of things that I want to say, and I'm not exactly sure where I want to start. So I'm gonna give too much background, like I am prone to do, and hopefully that doesn't distract us from the scriptures. Like I was saying before, Lehi. Well, if you know the temple ordinances, then you know a little bit of the structure of what Lehi is going after. And Lehi loves the temple. So when you see Lehi talking, there's a very high chance that it's framed in the temple journey, that it's framed in a way that we can follow if we know the temple journey. And it's helpful in other ways too, but if you know the temple journey, then you know a deeper level. And this is something my brother and I have been arguing about quite a bit, or discussing, but we kind of are asking, what is the what is the purpose of the temple? There's to make covenants. There's to show us God's plan. There's to show us the path. And my brother asks, well, how literal are the things that not the story, but how literally do we need to know everything that goes on in the temple? And I'm not framing that question exactly right, but there's a question of, do we need to know it because this is a metaphor for our life? Do we need to know it because there's important things that we need to be able to go through? Is it more important metaphorically? Is it more important literally? There's a lot of question there. Anyway, the reason that I'm saying that now is because when Lehi says it, when he teaches, when he talks, everything is framed in the temple. And because of that, the deeper you know it, the deeper you understand it, the more you'll be able to say, I see how this reflects on every aspect of my life. So let's dive into it. And with that long introduction, let's jump with one other thought that I had that might not relate quite as much. So in the very first two verses, he directs who he's talking to, and the answer is Jacob. Lehi's talking to Jacob, and he says twice in the first two verses, my firstborn in the wilderness, my firstborn in the days of my tribulation in the wilderness. And I have a lot of questions there. First of all, what does Jacob mean exactly, right? Jacob is sorry, my other screen is being silly. Jacob, the name Jacob means he who wrestles with God. And it's clearly very interesting that Lehi or that Nephi or that Mormon said that Jacob is the name. That Jacob is the name given to this person. All the names mean something. All the names mean so much in the Book of Mormon. So I guess I'll throw this in here real quick, just because I am talking about names and I love this a bunch. So for example, Lehi means jawbone, and the word Devere, which is the Holy of Holies, is in at least some ways related to the word to speak. Maybe not etymologically, but in the mind of the people, it's God speaking to the people. So Lehi is the mouthpiece of God in some ways. That's what his name is supposed to evoke. Nephi means good, precious, fair, and I have some other things I'm going to add that I'm not as quite as sure about, but he's supposed to be the fruit, and more. He's supposed to be referencing the tree of life as well, that which is good. And so in Lehi's vision, he talks about the fruit that was how he describes the fruit, and the way he describes the fruit is the meaning of the name Nephi. Another thing that I just found recently, and I'm not exactly sure as to how true all this is, so if we have any linguistic experts, I'd love to hear more. But the name Nephi in Egyptian is NFR, and if you look at the symbol, it is the combination of heart and windpipe, and so the symbol for Nephi might be windpipe as well, kind of going to the speaking as well, as so it's similar to Lehi. It might be related to that. And then if you break the letters apart, which they probably didn't do, but the letters NFR are the symbol for I don't think it's like the ocean, but water, and then horned viper, and I don't remember the last one, so I'll have to figure it out. But either way, those two are very symbolic. Okay, now moving on to Jacob. So like I said, Jacob means he who wrestles with God. And And Jacob, his life is dedicated to the service of God. And you can see in verse 3 that he is supposed to spend his days dwelling with Nephi and in the service of God. So there's a bunch of thoughts there, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that either in retrospect or at least in Lehi's speech, which is happening probably or compiled probably later, um, they see Jacob as someone who is devoted to God and also who dwelled, which is a very important word, and we're going to talk about it with Nephi and uh, with in God's house. So, okay. So here's my theory about chapter 2. I think chapter 2, and then I'll have to explain some more things. So the Hebrew temple had 3 rooms, and I think I talked about this before. There's the ulam, which is the porch or the courtyard or the exterior, that area. Then there's the hekal, which is the main area where it has incense and has shewbread. And this is the room that I think a lot of the trials go through when the prophets have these visions. When Lehi has these visions, there's a lot of things happening here. For example, there's probably a feast in here. The people going through the temple probably lay down in the dust. They become as Adam, and then they rise from the dust, and then they have to go through a trial where they have to cross a narrow area, and there's pits of despair nearby that they have to get across. And the only way they get across is by reaching to God, by grasping onto God, and He will pull them through or over and through the veil. But there's also judgment going on before they get at the veil. There's judgment, and then if they're found worthy and if they know what's going on, then they move through the veil to the Holy of Holies, or the Devir, which I already talked about. The Devir. I speak Spanish, and so V's and B's kind of mess up for me, and I don't really know which one I'm saying. So, my theory on this one is that this is Lehi preaching in the second room in the Hekal, or preaching in the first room, but he's doing it as an authority figure, and he's talking to people who are going through the temple, and he's telling them about some of the things that they're going to face. And he's saying it in ways that might not be super obvious, but that are incredibly important. So, and they ring. If you've been through the temple, they're going to echo. There's going to be bells going off in your head. So, I'd like you to pay attention to that. Okay, so now that we've got through the introduction, let's see. I'd like to mention some of the things that might get your temple bells ringing. So we have the phrase "consecrate thine afflictions." That should make you think of the ulam and the sacrifices done in the courtyard or in the porch. And I might be speaking incorrectly. So if I'm speaking incorrectly, please correct me. Please add specificity to what I'm saying, but also be specific yourself about what you know and what you don't know. Are you speaking from the time period from when Lehi came from Jerusalem, or are you speaking before, or are you speaking after? Like, where does your knowledge come from? Because I think that there was stuff that was lost. So I am speaking as the voice of authority, but mostly I'm just speaking of what I'm getting from the scriptures and the correlations we can make. So anyway, we have the sacrifice happening in the courtyard. then he talks about thy soul shall be blessed and thou shalt dwell. So the word dwell is an incredibly important word, and there's a few different translations we can go on, but I don't know how much I want to shorten it. You can go with shakan or yashav. So shakan is related to the word shekinah, which is the dwelling presence of God, and it's also related to the everything's related to the tabernacle. And then you have yashav, which is to sit, to remain, to inhabit, to stay. So people dwelling in tents and cities, but also Lord sitting, Yeshav, between the cherubim in Psalm 99:1. And so there's a bunch of stuff going on that could be, that's very temple coded, very temple related. And whichever word they use, it implies a few things. It implies dwelling in Eden, in the Holy of Holies. So I don't know if he's predicting here or prophesying that he's going to dwell, be in the Holy of Holies with thy brother Nephi, and thy days shall be spent in the service of God. That's it's all related. That's where you'll be. You'll be living, sitting. You'll be in the temple. And we're going to hit it again. This is an important thing that we're going to talk about again. Dwell. Okay. Then Lehi talks about how Jacob has beheld the glory of Christ in thy youth and in his youth. Thou hast because of the righteousness of thy Redeemer, for thou hast beheld in the fullness of time, he cometh to bring salvation unto men, and thou hast beheld in thy youth thy Redeemer, Christ's glory. And then he uses the word minister, which is a temple word, and that's what the priests do. So Christ is the one ministering, but he's also mentioning that Jacob, by connecting all these, that Jacob will be a ministering as well. That's something that Jacob will be doing. Let's see. Now, this is where we really, in my mind, well, okay. And the way is prepared from the fall of man, and salvation is free. So this is where I feel like he's really getting into his sermon, and he talks about the fall of man and salvation is free, and the way is prepared. This is a direct call to the temple, saying there is a path, there's a good path that will lead you to God and will lead you to righteousness and lead you to happiness. But a lot of people might not know it, but this is the path. Everything else might lead to momentary happiness, but it's not going to lead to a fullness of happiness. And it's happened because man left Eden, the fall of man. So you must get on that path that's prepared to get back to Eden. Now, I think that the reason I think this is happening in the second room is because this makes it seem like that this information is already happened. The law of Moses. So this here is talking about men are instructed sufficiently that they know good from evil, and the law is given unto men. Out in the courtyard, in my mind, they're being taught the law of Moses. That's where they're taught that. They're taught, these are the sacrifices you must make. This is what you must do. And it's supposed to say that this is like a step up from the way of the world. This is you getting on the path. But you must understand the law. And without the law, but the law is not enough to get you through. So that through the veil. So what you need, the redemption cometh in and through the Holy Messiah, for he is full of grace and truth. And so then he offers the person, he says, this is the person that you will be seeing. This is the person that you will understand, that you will see this person, and they will come to the second room. They will come into the the Hekal, and they will administer unto you. And this is the person. Who is it? It's the Holy Messiah. So the term for Holy Messiah is probably the term that he probably uses is Ha Mashiach, or the Anointed One. And who is that? That's the high priest. That's the high priest who anoints and is anointed. But there's the great high priest, and that is the Redeemer that was mentioned in verse 3. So there's the Redeemer, there's the person who acts in the place of the Redeemer, and this person will come and he will teach them about redemption, how to get through to the Garden of Eden, to the Holy of Holies. And what does he do? He offers himself a sacrifice. So instead of having the sacrifice in the courtyard, you have the inner sacrifice, which is the sacrifice that Christ offers himself instead of the animal sacrifice in the courtyard. This is Christ himself in the second room. And whoever has a broken heart and a contrite spirit will be the people who can take advantage of that. I have a note here. I don't know how apropos it is, so I'm going to read it real quick. Yeah, I think it's what I'm saying. Continue. Okay. So then it talks about why did we do this? It's so that we understand that you can't get through that path, the way, and end up in the Holy of Holies. You can't end up in dwelling in the presence of God, save it be through the Holy Messiah, Mashiach, who layeth down his life, who sacrifices himself, and taketh it again, that he may bring to pass the resurrection. So this is like a little summary of that. But what does he say? How does he say it? He says that can dwell in the presence of God. So the presence of God is in the Devir, is in the Holy of Holies. Dwell is to sit in, or to live in, or to settle, inhabit. There's a bunch of different ones I can say. And so you're not going to be able to live with God unless you go through this path. And once again, I can go into that more, but that is such an important word, to dwell, because it's also like you cannot abide the presence of God. You will be burned in his presence unless you have gone through this. My voice is going, and I haven't even talked for very long. So let's hit verse 9 real quick. And I just wanted to touch on this because I think we can touch on it more later. But the first fruits unto God. Why does he use the word fruits? First fruits. What does that mean? And I'm not going to answer all the questions now, but there is a direct correlation when Lehi speaking with the tree of life. He's always referencing it. And another thing that I would like to add that I just found out recently is that there's a correlation. This is at the very least, the one that I heard about was like early Christian church. So like very, very early Christian church, but they understood the meaning of the word, the flesh of the fruit, and the flesh or the crumb of the bread is what we call it in English, except no one ever says it. You have a bread, if you slice it, you turn it so you can see the whole thing. You have the rind going around the edge. The inner part is the crumb, but the early Christian church saw that as correlating with the flesh of the fruit or the flesh of the animal. It's all correlated. So Christ, who sacrificed himself, gave up his his flesh, like he in the flesh. And yet at the great feast before he went to the garden, he had them eat bread and drink wine, his flesh and his blood. And that's because these things were directly correlated in the early Christian mind. It wasn't a confusing thing. It wasn't a stretch. It was directly correlated. So I think when he says first fruits, I think all these things come up. I think there's the fruit on the tree of life. I think there's the sacrifice that Christ makes, and I think that there's a lot going on. I'll just say that. We'll talk about more later, but Christ is the one making that intercession, is what he says. And it's necessary if you want to be saved. So I went over a lot in just 9 verses, and I feel like I'm also maybe not doing as precise a job as I possibly could be. I kind of am wandering because I'm following the verse structure, but I'm not following any game plan on my end. But this is how my scripture study is. I start seeing things. And so this was a real life scripture study that I just did. It wasn't like a game plan I had. It was me reading it and saying, these are the connections that I see. And so that means that you have to kind of follow my head as I start making those connections, and I go. So, yeah, what I really want to say is that if you're not reading the Book of Mormon, read it. If you haven't been to the temple, go to the temple. And if you're not correlating the two and saying that these things are the same, then you're missing out, because you won't understand why Lehi follows the path he does, or why they make these references. And there's way more references that I probably missed just in those short verses. But that was how I read it. And oh my gosh, there's so much more. There's so much more. I would recommend that you guys do the things I said, and read the scriptures constantly and slowly, so that you're not missing meaning in the verses. And thanks. I'll talk to you guys again soon.